And the referee again checking his watch. And there it goes! The final whistle!
Carlo Corazon will wait inside the box for this from Martinet. And a header on it there, and that might have been it. That is a goal for Canada. The header was at Jason DeVos.
One last chance for Canada. Sophie Schmidt takes a deflection. Matheson is down the goal. The Twins bronze for Canada.
Qualified for World Cup '86, defeating Honduras by a score of 2-1 here in St. John's, Newfoundland this afternoon.
Welcome to the Canada Soccer Nation podcast. My name is Jason DeVos. I'm the Director of Development with Canada Soccer, and I'm joined now by Brad Fougere, Digital and Corporate Communications Manager with Canada Soccer. Brad, how's your week been? Last couple of weeks for you?
It's summer in Ontario, Jason DeVos.
It's crazy. This weather is bonkers. I am currently wearing shorts in Ontario in November, which is unheard of. It's never happened before in my lifetime.
No, it's been crazy. My kids and I went to the weather office on the Government of Canada website to take a look at what the temperatures usually are, and we noticed that this is insane. We also noticed that many days have had snow in early November in Ottawa. And that, temperatures like this are pretty much unheard of. So enjoying every last second of it.
Yeah, my dog Charlie is not happy. He's not a hot weather dog. He's an English lab, and he loves the cold and the cold water and the cold snow, and he'll stay outside for hours in the winter, but he just drags his sorry behind whenever the temperature gets into double digits. So it's been a bit of a challenge walking the puppies over the last couple of days, but I suppose we can't complain, because very, very soon I'm sure that everyone in Ontario will be up in arms about how cold it is and the frigid temperatures across the province.
For sure. Yeah. It makes it extra difficult, of course, not to be able to get out there and get a kick around in as well. I will note that. But yeah, tough to complain about 22 degrees in early November in Ontario, for sure.
Yeah. I was down in London, Ontario recently, and I was meeting up with a couple of coaches, dropping off some of their Nike kit for the coach education courses that they participated in. So I was chatting with a few of them, and on the Sunday I was out, and they were on the pitch. The sun was shining. It was beautiful. Everyone was wearing shorts and t-shirts, and if you had told me it was November, I would have laughed in your face because it just didn't look like a November scene. But I was down at London TFC, one of the National Youth Club license holders. I was at their new field, Tricar Field, and very impressed with the facility that they've built there in partnership with the City of London. And kudos to Ian Campbell and Dave DeBenedictis and his team, everyone there at London TFC, for the work they've done to get that facility off the ground. Gives kids a great place to play down in that neck of the woods, which is always great to see. On the European soccer front and domestic soccer front, Brad, there's been a few major milestones in the last couple of weeks. Tell us about what caught your eye.
Yeah, there has been, for sure. Janine Becky, who we talked about on the last edition of the podcast, who would be playing in the FA Cup final, won the FA Cup final with Manchester City.
And scored.
Also scored. Yes, absolutely. A late third goal for Manchester City to hoist her first hardware with the club in Manchester City. So congratulations to Janine for that.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Really, really good. Forge FC, Canadian Premier League champions, are creating history as we speak, and have progressed to the CONCACAF League quarterfinals against a team from Haiti. I'm going to let you pronounce the name of the team, though, because I haven't a clue how to pronounce this.
Well, I can tell you that they're playing them on December 1st. Forge, are making a habit of these late game heroics in CONCACAF League from last year and now into this year. A late penalty kick winner against Panamanian side Tower FC to advance to the quarterfinal. CONCACAF came out with some updates to the CONCACAF League schedule and format. The top 6 teams will advance. However, at this point, if Forge does fail to win their quarterfinal match, and I'm not sure I see that happening the way that they've been playing in CONCACAF League this year, but they will have a second opportunity to qualify to the 2021 CONCACAF Champions League. So things are coming up. Forge FC, Arcaï, I believe to be the name of the Haitian club, but I'm not real good at Creole. So if that's wrong, apologies. Send Jason a note at podcast@canadasoccer.com. But yeah, looking forward to that on December 1st. And CONCACAF has some other club competitions kicking off. So Montreal Impact will actually play again this year in CONCACAF Champions League, which of course was canceled due to COVID-19. But that will be rekindled in December as well. So they'll have another crack.
Did you watch the Montreal Impact final MLS regular season game the other day?
I did not actually. No, I did not see that game.
It was an interesting one. It was one of those ones that went right to the end. But kudos to the Montreal Impact. They have qualified for the MLS playoffs, as have Toronto FC, who we knew long ago who had qualified. They were in contention for the Supporters' Shield, but unfortunately weren't able to quite capture that. But two Canadian teams into the MLS playoffs. Vancouver Whitecaps unfortunately missing out by a few points, but plenty to look forward to as that competition winds up. It's interesting because when I returned back to North America from Europe, the whole concept of playoffs is just foreign in most European football, if outside of promotion and relegation playoffs. So those are incredibly lucrative matches and incredibly pressure-filled matches. But the whole concept of post-season play is very much a North American construct. And it does take a little bit of time, I think, for many Europeans to wrap their heads around what that's all about. But it is good to see Canadian MLS teams participating in the playoffs because it always brings a huge level of excitement for the fans. Having said that, the challenge this year has been unique to all professional clubs everywhere because there's no fans in the stadiums. Do you think that's going to have an impact, Brad, on the feeling or the mood amongst the teams as they head into the playoff season?
I think at this point they're pretty used to it. I mean, they've been facing this all season, and I mean for the Canadian teams, obviously playing in these competitions, they're not at home anymore. I mean they had their mini Canadian sort of crossover league that led to Toronto FC earning a berth in the 2020 Canadian Championship final. But yeah, for the most part, they've been moving around the States, playing out of the three American venues where they're playing and playing in front of no fans. So I have no idea, but I feel the uniqueness. The uniqueness is probably worn off. And yeah, there's lots to play for. Obviously, Montreal are in the playoffs-ish. I mean, they're in a playoff match, so they'll need to beat the New England Revolution before they actually sort of earn their berth in the playoffs proper. So that match will go on Friday. But yeah, I think they're finding new motivations at this point, and it's not necessarily hearing that bell ring in Montreal or fans in the stands.
Yeah, it's definitely changed the experience for sure. But it is great to see teams continuing to play. I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and they were saying that, the whole concept of football has changed, and you talk about the mental strain that everyone is under dealing with COVID and the challenges that everyone has faced. It's had a real impact on mental health, and having football to continue to watch has been a blessing, even though it's not necessarily in the form that we've become accustomed to. So, lots to look forward to in the weeks ahead. But when we come back after the break, we're going to chat with two gentlemen who are dealing with COVID and doing so in a province that has seen a complete turnaround in terms of what their case count is. And they've gone from a very good situation to one that's very challenging and very difficult to deal with. But I think they've handled it extremely well. So when we come back after the break, we'll be joined by those two gentlemen, and we'll hear how they've managed their way through COVID. Stay tuned. Our first guest today spent 19 years on the FIFA referees list and was involved in 11 FIFA competitions, including the FIFA World Cups in 2002, 2006, and 2010. He set the record for most World Cup games as a referee or an assistant referee at 14 when he took the field on July 10th, 2010 in the third place playoff match between Uruguay and Germany at Port Elizabeth Stadium. His World Cup appointments are many, and they include 2 third place matches in 2002 and 2010, as well as the Germany-Italy semifinal in 2006. In total, he officiated nearly 150 international matches involving clubs and national teams playing at the highest competitions in the world, including the Gold Cup, the Olympic Games, the FIFA Confederations Cup, 2 FIFA Club World Cups, as well as the Under-20 World Youth Championships, and 2 Under-17 FIFA Under-17 Championships. In 2012, he was appointed by FIFA to its referees committee as a development member. He was selected as a member of the Canadian Soccer Hall of Fame in 2014 and has worked as the executive director of Manitoba Soccer since 2004. It is an impressive list of accomplishments as an assistant referee and referee for Mr. Hector Vergara. Hector, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Hey, Jason. Thank you very much for having me. I'm doing great. Thanks. It's interesting that I haven't heard that list of activities for a long, long time.
Well, you were born outside of Canada, but you came to Canada as a youngster, and you're very much a Canadian. And we don't talk about the success of people in Canada. I remember working in the media when you established that record of World Cup matches as a referee or assistant referee, and just thinking to myself, wow, it's incredible that a Canadian has achieved this. What are your memories of your lengthy refereeing career? You must have countless memories that you look back on.
I remember Jason DeVos at the Winnipeg Soccer Complex back in qualifying rounds for World Cups. I
hope I was on my best behavior.
I don't know. It's one of your earlier years, I guess. Your earlier years, but yeah, I mean, it's. I have very fond memories of my experience as an assistant referee. We've talked before. I don't like living in the past too much, but it is fun to remember and the early starts. And it's like you said, I started officiating not in South America. I was born in South America. I was born in Chile, but I didn't start officiating in Chile. I started officiating in Canada. So I truly have done my refereeing career, even my playing career, for the small playing career as an amateur player, that it was in Canada. Everything was done here. And I've had people, Pierluigi Collina, people like this, people recognize that name, obviously still now involved at the FIFA level, the highest level of the referees committee, and was involved in UEFA and so forth. And I remember Pierluigi and others at that time, Graham Paul from England, when we went to the World Cup, and people say, what Canadians know about soccer, that kind of stuff. And somebody saying having a Canadian official refereeing in the World Cup or being part of the World Cup is like having, and this was, because of the weather conditions, right, is to having a referee from Africa officiating the Stanley Cup, because you would never kind of see that in because of the climate. You don't think of ice rinks in Africa. You don't think of soccer fields in Canada because of the impression people have around the world that Canada is a hockey country and that all we do is winter sport, and that we don't have soccer in our nation, and that we couldn't be a powerhouse in soccer because we don't have it. We don't play it for a year like other countries do. And so it's interesting that that's the analogy people use when they talk about the accomplishments I had of getting to that level coming from Canada. But we can do it. I've proven it. Others have proven it. And it's possible. So it takes a lot of work and dedication, but you can definitely get to that level.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we've seen great success on the women's side, obviously. Not yet able to lift a FIFA World Cup, but certainly qualification has been a constant occurrence. Do you think that world and global perception will change when the men qualify? And I say when, not if, because I'm that confident that it's going to happen. Do you think that perception of Canada as a footballing nation will start to change globally when Canada's men's team qualifies for the World Cup?
I think so. I think it, but to some degree it also changes. It has to change internally. I think that our own people, have to start believing that there is a soccer culture in Canada. And we need to think that way. We need to think that soccer is part of our fabric too. And when we continue to do that and feel proud about that and act that way, then the rest of the world's going to start believing us too. And of course, having the women's national team, the men's national team, and having officials participate at the highest level of the game, all of that will help. I mean, the youth national teams have done well, both men and women. And we've had, other than myself, there's been other officials in Canada, both on the male and female side, who participated in the game and officiated important games around the world. So we're starting to develop at all levels. I think it's important for our parents, our kids, to think a little bit like they have a soccer culture as well. And when we behave like that, we have that, show that passion all the time. We see a glimpse of it once in a while, but I think we need to be more consistent in that. When we show that, I think that people will recognize us as a soccer nation.
For the last 15 or so years, you've been the executive director of Manitoba Soccer. The last 8 to 9 months dealing with COVID, global pandemic, has that been the most challenging time of your career?
Well, I've gone through, as Canada Soccer did, I've gone through governance change with Manitoba Soccer, and that was difficult because it involves a lot of change. But this, for sure, this has been the most difficult time because it has affected not only us as an organization, but it has impacted all the way down to grassroots soccer. When you're talking about governance and you're dealing with boards and things like this, it's affecting the people at that level. And sure, eventually has to trickle down to impact your member organizations and your voting members and their structures and so forth. But when you're talking about a pandemic, when it doesn't allow kids to get on the field and to play the game they love and to have to sit home, that I think it has the greatest impact, negative impact on the game. And we talk about, some people complain that we're going to lose players and that the game's going to get hurt. And I say, what the reality is, we've lost players. The reality is we're already in the rebuilding mode of the sport. And not only us, it's across other sports, at least in our province, it's hit other sports hard as well. It's not just soccer that is suffering. So it's been difficult. It's been difficult financially. It's been difficult structurally. It's been difficult for the mental health and well-being of our community, not only the soccer community, but the community in general. And that's been the issue for us. Always has been the safety of our players, coaches, referees, volunteers. And everything we've done in this province has been with that in mind, and knowing that full well that some of the decisions that we would have to make would have somewhat of a negative impact on the sport. They wouldn't be popular decisions because people want to play. We want to see people play. And sometimes the provincial health authorities allowed for some flexibility in how you applied the restrictions. But we wanted to be take a tough stance on this because it is affecting the entire community, not just soccer community. So we wanted to play our part in ensuring that the safety of our community was at the forefront of our considerations and in the decision-making process. And for that reason, we established processes that some people obviously weren't going to be happy with, but needed to be made because at the end of the day, we were concerned about the safety of everyone.
I mean, I think the multi-phased approach that every member association has taken has proved in hindsight to be the right approach, because Manitoba was relatively COVID-free as a province in the early stages of the pandemic, but things have changed dramatically lately. Can you talk about the importance of that multi-phased planning process and how it's made it maybe a little easier for you to roll back to an earlier phase of return to play, given the high case counts that you're having in Manitoba right at the moment?
Well, as you know, we've had lots of discussions with Canada Soccer, lots of discussions with the provincial health authorities, the Sport of Manitoba, who's dealing with all the sports. We involved our membership in some of the consultation processes to establish what we call the return to participate protocols across Canada. Some people call it return to play protocols. Same initials at the end of the day. And we developed together documentation that could support the return to participate by everyone, whether it be at a practice stage, whether it be a competition stage, whether it be clinics for coaches and referees. It addressed all the components of the game through that process, and it was very detailed, very inclusive, taking a lot of things into consideration. And then our provincial health authorities in Manitoba established the restart pandemic response system level, where they included the limited risk of the green color coding green, the caution level yellow, and the restricted orange, and the critical red, which we lined up against our protocols, and by using this response system, we were able to, as you said, go back to different stages once we were probably one of the first provinces that went to the competition stage after everything was shut down across Canada by Canada Soccer and the provinces. And you're right, we were, at one point during the summer, we were only at less than 10 cases in the province. And so we were all pretty happy about that. We were all doing well. We were applying the protocols. We were back to competition. Some of the leagues in our membership were able to get in a 10-week competition in the summer. And then all of a sudden, things started to go south, and the number of cases began to increase, and the restrictions came back. And at that time, then we were on stage 3, which was for us competition level. It was more or less the caution level, which it matched up. And then all of a sudden, we had to go to orange because things got worse. And that matched up to our stage 2 and 1, which is essentially simple practices, and then 6v6 max. So now we're in an area in Winnipeg. We're actually into the red code, and that level means that to us there's no sanctioned soccer activities, not even practices. So it's crazy how it has gone in Manitoba from being one of those provinces with probably the lowest numbers in the summer to per capita being the largest number of cases daily in the country. Mm-hmm. And for us, having had this system in place early in the process has really helped us to be able to return to those stages where it's appropriate, depending on the circumstances of the province, because the provincial health authorities have put different parts of the province at different levels, depending on the circumstance and the situation that the pandemic's causing in that area. So it's possible in certain areas of the province currently, we are in the restricted zone, which is orange, which means that the players and organizations can practice and go 6v6 max in stage 2. And then there's other parts of the province, like Winnipeg, metropolitan Winnipeg area, which is in critical red and can't do any soccer activities. So having the response system level and our protocols match became a tool for us to be able to use that allowed us to step back when we needed to, without too much concern about how do we do this, and we don't have to make decisions without any process. In this place, we had something in place that allowed us to follow a step-by-step process and make it easier for us to defend the decisions. Because at one time, Winnipeg was yellow, and one of our other parts of the province was in orange. So we had to put that sector of the community on stage 2, while in Winnipeg we were playing competition. So it's and now it's flipped. Now it's flipped.
Well, it's the fluidity of it all, right? And it really depends on the case count in the specific part of the province. I always kind of explain to people who are not from Canada that when they ask questions about how's it going in Canada, well, it depends on what part of the country you're in. It's a very big country, and there's a lot of variability even within a province. So, I think you touch on something really important there, is that ongoing communication that you have with your provincial health authority, and monitoring the case counts and having those different threat levels, for lack of a better term, aligning to your different stages and phases of return to play. How important has it been to keep that dialogue open and ongoing with your members, the clubs, as they are delivering the programs on behalf of all soccer players in Manitoba?
Well, it's been important not only to keep the communications open with the membership, it's also been important to keep the communications open with Sport Manitoba and, as you said, the provincial health authorities. Because at the end of the day, this is impacting the well-being of the community. And it's impacting, obviously, as you can imagine, the well-being of the players, the coaches, the referees that want to get back in the field and play. And we've been very diligent in providing updates on a regular basis to our membership. And I would say that on average, we're providing an update probably once a week, at least once a week. At one point during the middle of the pandemic, when we started to establish protocols, to establish communications, we used to have regular weekly meetings with the largest members who are organizing competition for most of the community. So that they would be aware fully what our thinking process was and how they could help us make some decisions. We did that we even went as far as establishing a crisis management team made up of volunteers from the board of directors of our organization and staff, a small group of people that gathered the information to make the decisions as to how we would proceed, and provided that information through the presidents of the leagues and the voting members to ensure that they're aware of what we were thinking and how we're proceeding. And obviously, not everybody's going to be 100% in favor of everything that you decide to do, but that's why we're the provincial body. We have a responsibility to ensure the safety of our participants. We have a responsibility to be diligent and to protect the integrity of the game and the people involved in it. And not everybody looks at it the same way, and that's fine. That's okay. Everybody is allowed to have their opinion. But at the end of the day, we know we had to make some difficult decisions, and it's very stressful, as you well know. I mean, you guys deal with Canada, so imagine dealing with the entire country and thinking that the whole country is being affected by this pandemic and the sport is suffering. So it's a very stressful time for everybody. Currently, we're in red in Winnipeg, like I said earlier, and there's no one in the office other than myself right now, because we have everybody working from home. And now it's become more of the norm because of the pandemic, people working from home and so forth. But I mean, I like to say that I like to make decisions as a group. It's not the same thing getting on a Zoom call with your staff and trying to make decisions that it is being in the same room and having a discussion and a debate and pulling out the whiteboard and drawing things out and all that kind of stuff that when you work together as a group, sometimes that cohesion you have and that relationship you have with your colleagues brings out the best in the team. And it's not so easy to do that as Zoom. No different than we've been doing. It's an unfortunate situation. It's impacted the sport across the world, and on a personal level, it's impacted everything that I've never been home so much in my life, and I'm still married, so I'm okay.
So you must be doing something right then.
Yeah, I must do something right. But the reality is that I travel a lot, and as you do, and others do in Canada soccer, because of the sport, because of the competitions, because of the referee clinics, the preparation of referees for the World Cup, and going to assess games and going to tournaments and all this kind of stuff that is associated with, on a personal level, with what I enjoy. And then that has all stopped. And we've been doing what we called RAP courses, referee assistance program courses, with all the member associations in CONCACAF, for example. And everything is done through Zoom. And it's not the same. It's absolutely not the same. Yes, it's good for getting some of the technical information out, but what referees really learn on the pitch, that's where they learn. And when you go to a course, you spend half your time on the field doing sessions on the field, trying to educate the referees to become better. You can't do that when you're in Zoom. It's difficult, and when you're not supposed to go out into large groups of gatherings to run a session. So it's impacted, obviously. It's impacted the entire world. It's impacted all the sports. And I'm glad to see that, some sports have been able to, at least at a professional level, get back to playing and creating the bubbles and those kind of things that at least put some sport activity on television for us to at least enjoy a little bit. Because what worries me most about this is how long this can be. We're almost going to hit a year with a pandemic, and are we going into a second year of the pandemic? And what's the impact going to be? Because in our case, in our province, we have organizations that may not survive even a year of the pandemic, and that's difficult. Like right now, we're into the indoor season and we're shut down. Everybody had plans to start indoor season in October. We've had to push it back to maybe December, and next week we have to make a decision whether that is going to be December, which being in having Winnipeg metropolitan area being the restricted area, in the critical area at red, it's almost impossible to start in December. And that means that maybe you're pushing it to January. And how long do you wait before you call the season off and you don't have a season at all? Which means that, and we all know across the country, we all depend on the same thing. We depend on registrations in order for us to get revenue to operate, to run programs, et cetera, et cetera. So if you don't have an indoor season, where do you get the registration money from? Because you're not going to take registrations for players who are not participating in the game. That's not logical, and that's not that's not ethical. So it's difficult for some organizations to be able to survive if they can't have competition, if they can't have games. And the reality is, in amateur soccer in their provinces, the senior players, they don't practice. Very few teams, in a premier division or first division will practice. The majority just wants to enjoy the game. They want to go play, and then they go for the social aspect of soccer as well. And that's particularly in the women's game. So in our province, if we don't have indoor soccer competitions, that means the senior women's league and the senior men's leagues are not playing at all. They're not doing anything. On the youth side, it's a little bit easier because clubs deal with development and they have, try to apply the LTPD concepts and therefore there'll be some practices happening leading up to competition. So if there is no competition, they find ways of doing scrimmages within their own team and things like this. But they have training sessions, so they can do it. They can register players. So there's a little bit of revenue that comes from there. But if you don't have competition, it hugely impacts the senior game in our province, at least.
Yeah, I mean, you've highlighted a lot of the key issues that I think people are dealing with at multiple levels of the game, whether it's at the provincial level, the district level, the club level, certainly at the national level with Canada Soccer. These are all things that are shifting sands and they're moving pieces that we all have to take into consideration. I really appreciate you taking the time, Hector, to chat with us and to explain some of those challenges. I'm delighted to hear that you're still married and that your wife hasn't changed the locks at home. So long may that continue and keep up the great work, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot, Jason. I appreciate you guys having us on, and take care, be safe, and hopefully we can all get back to the field as soon as possible here in a safe way.
Perfect. Thanks, Hector. Much appreciated. Welcome back to the Canada Soccer Nation podcast. Pleased to be joined now by Chris Lourenco, the technical lead of Manitoba Soccer. Chris, we just had Hector Vergara, the executive director, on talking about some of the challenges around COVID. How has it been for you having to work from home and managing, the delivery of the game across the province of Manitoba? What's that process been like for you as a technical lead?
It's provided certainly challenges, I think, for not only myself, but for everybody in Manitoba. But I guess my attitude and the way that I kind of look at it is it's a good challenge and a way for us to find new ways to kind of engage our membership. So it's been different and weird, but it's also been quite exciting for me as especially being somewhat new into the role.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a little over a year. I think we missed your anniversary, but it was September of 2019 that you took on this role. Born and raised in Manitoba, though, I want to ask you this question. What's your earliest memory of soccer?
Oh, my earliest memory. I must have been around 6 years old, I think. Just at my parents' place, we had quite a narrow backyard. And our backyard, there was nothing behind it but an auto body shop or a car shop. And we had a fence at the back of the yard. And like I said, it was quite long and narrow. But I remember just being back there with my dad and always trying to kick the ball towards him, but ultimately really trying to kick it over the fence. And then I would have to go climb over the fence, go get the ball, come back. But that's something that always kind of sticks in my head. And I maybe was why I ended up being a winger when I was a kid growing up, playing, always like crossing the ball and playing it quite up high in the air.
So talk a little bit about your playing career, what that what that looks like. What level did you play at? What was the highlight of your soccer experience growing up as a player?
I'd say the highlight for me was being part of the Canada Games in 2005 in Regina, Saskatchewan. That's probably the highest level that I played. And there wasn't a whole lot of opportunities, I would say, at the time. And looking back, there probably was a lot more opportunities than I had. It would have been really down to me to go and seek those opportunities. But locally, just playing, I played provincial team and like I said, our local premier youth level growing up. And then, Canada Games was kind of the pinnacle of that for me as I transitioned into just kind of local men's leagues and then ultimately into coaching.
So how did you make that transition? I mean, did you go off when you finished high school? Did you go off to university and do a sport management degree? What was your education background? How did you transition from the playing soccer to working in soccer?
That's a great question. My schooling, I went to the University of Manitoba. I had nothing to do with sports. I was a Bachelor of Arts major in economics and a minor in political studies. So no sports in there at all, but kind of throughout university. And just as I got out of high school, a friend of mine at the time was running a local mini soccer program that he had been running for a number of years and asked for some help. He ended up getting quite sick through it, or not through the program, but he ended up getting quite sick and needed some help. So anyway, I jumped into the program and then kind of started coaching that way. And he really got me into that program or into coaching and kind of gave me that bug of, there's more to the game than just playing. So I finished university and then ended up just getting a job at an insurance company right out of university. And luck would have it that a job came up at the Manitoba Soccer Association. And I looked at it and then kind of spoke to my family and just said, this is an opportunity that I think I need to take and I need to be in. I love the game. I didn't think there were jobs or a way for me to make a living by working in the sport, but let's give it a shot. I was young and that was 7 years ago now, almost 8 years ago. And here I am.
Your previous role with MSA wasn't a technical role, though, was it? Tell us a little bit about what that role was and how you sort of got into that and how you transitioned into and out of it, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, so my first role when I got into Manitoba Soccer was the title was Special Events and Competitions Coordinator. So running the provincial championships and doing our banquet and just multiple events throughout the association. And as I was doing that, because it wasn't a technical role, I wanted to continue on or start my coaching experience. So I went through coaching licenses and kind of did all that on the side or outside of my job title. I had actually applied for 2 jobs at the time, just before I got that job. One was the events and one was the technical, I think it was technical manager's position at the time. Didn't get it because I had no technical experience. So that got me into the association. And from there, I kind of progressed and ended up moving over into finance as that job came up a few years later. And again, just kind of another opportunity for me to go through the association and then gain more experience with a different role and then different responsibilities. And then from there, I ended up leaving, going to a local club at Bonnie-Vital Soccer.
Yeah, you were the executive director there for a period of time. How did your MSA experience prepare you to take on a role as an executive director at the club level, where you're essentially responsible for the operation of the whole program?
I think, I think my connection or my relationship with Hector really helped me prepare for that kind of role. Having a good relationship with Hector and him working with me and handing me the keys, if you will, for lack of a better term, in terms of different responsibilities at the association, I think at the time definitely helped me prepare for a completely different role at the club. And again, it was the way that I looked at it at the time when I left, and then I felt bad leaving at that time, but I felt like it was another progression for me, where I could continue to grow and continue to learn and just get a better understanding of the soccer landscape.
So 2019 comes around and you're through the summer months, and this opportunity comes up at Manitoba Soccer to be the technical lead. What goes through your mind at that stage, as you're working at the club level as an executive director? What pulled you back into that technical role?
I think the ultimate thing that pulled me back was me wanting to be in a technical role. I had been wanting to be in a technical position through soccer since I first applied at the MSA, and like I mentioned, I didn't get that role at that time, but I kept kind of working in the background and working to gain a little bit more experience through coaching on the side and in different programs. And when the position came up, and it was completely unexpected for me, I had no intentions of leaving the club at that time. I had a great relationship with everyone at the club, and I was really, really enjoying my role. But this role came up back at Manitoba Soccer, and I spoke to my wife at the time, and we were just getting married actually when all this was kind of going on, and we both kind of looked at each other and said, this is something you've been wanting to do for a long time, and I think the way that I ultimately looked at it was it's now or never. I don't know if an opportunity like this is going to come up again. So I kind of had to jump at it, and with a little bit of help from Stuart Neely on the children's license around the same time, he kind of nudged me in the direction a little bit, even just applying, because I hadn't considered it. And I did, and then ended up getting the role. So
what have you learned though in terms of the business side of things? A lot of times when we're working with clubs, and specifically with club technical directors, there's a gap in knowledge when it comes to understanding the business of sport, the delivery of sport, and the structural components that go into delivering a club program. Most coaches who are technical directors, or technical directors who come from a coaching background, just want to be on the field playing and working with players, rather than in the office building a program and actually putting strategic plans in place and understanding the budgeting that goes around it, long-term financial forecasting and things like that. How did that background and your education as well in economics help you and prepare you for what is a very challenging provincial technical lead role?
Yeah, I feel like, based on all of my experiences and everything that I had kind of gone through with school and then with coaching and just every sort of aspect that I touched within the game, I think definitely has helped me prepare for, like you're saying, the role is much more than just coaching on the field. And that's something when I first got into the game that I had no idea about. You look at, when I was younger, look at a technical director and think that, it's a coach, you're the coach of the province, and that's kind of how it works. But again, going through all the different roles that I did and meeting, a whole bunch of different people and and connecting with not only people in Winnipeg and in Manitoba, but across the country through different courses and so forth. Just those connections alone, I think, really helped me prepare for the role now and the challenges that I'm currently facing and will obviously face going forward.
We'll talk about the challenge of COVID in a second, but aside from that, what are the biggest challenges that you face in a technical lead role at the provincial level? Is it communication? Is it relationship building? Is it, getting to know the individuals working within the game? What's the biggest challenge that you've faced so far?
I would say that in Manitoba's, especially Winnipeg, is it's a small place, but it's a big place. It's kind of in that in between. We're not really a small province or a small town, but we're certainly not a big one either. We're not Toronto and we're not Ontario. So I find it is a little bit unique in that sense, but it's small enough, and the soccer community is small enough that communicating with everybody and connecting with everybody and really having everybody believe in you and believe in what you're doing, I'm finding it is probably the biggest challenge that I face at the moment. And it's certainly not impossible. Like I said, the community is small enough where I basically knew most of the soccer people coming into the role. So I had a prior relationship with everybody, but really getting them on board with, new ideas and new concepts, that for sure has been the most challenging so far.
Mm-hmm. I find it requires a little bit of a facilitation skill set. This idea that the technical lead's going to have all the answers and he or she is going to be able to tell everyone how to do their job. It's just not the reality in our world. And it's much more likely that you will have to be a collaborator and a facilitator of workshops and meetings and almost chairing these advisory groups who are going to be feeding information into you, and then you have to kind of distill that as a group and developing those skill sets. It aligns a lot to coach education in a lot of ways. You've gone through that process obviously in recent months with Jim Laughlin leading the way. What have you learned from that process when it comes to doing the job as a technical lead?
I would say that's probably where my biggest learning has come in so far. Coming into the role, just Manitoba in general lost a lot of our learning facilitators through people leaving the province and going into kind of new ventures. So I immediately had to kind of get in and become a learning facilitator myself. So right away with Jim Laughlin, he worked with myself and Adam Mui at the time and going through that. But like I said, that's where the biggest learning for me kind of came, was seeing and learning from Jim and learning how to facilitate, as you're saying, and really taking those skills and transferring them over to, the technical director or the technical lead's role and the different aspects that I face in there. But Jim has definitely been a big influence for me in that area. And different things that he mentioned to Adam and myself, us both being quite young and young, especially relative to a lot of the people in the province who are in technical roles, saying that, your age and your lack of experience, if you will, really has nothing to do with it. There's a lot more that I can bring, and Adam at the time brought to the role, where we could use that kind of to our advantage and really to try and bring people together. So.
You mentioned Adam Mui, who's moved on from Manitoba Soccer to take on another role within the game in another province, but you've had to change and adapt and sort of amend your technical department. Talk a little bit about that and the individuals who are taking on new roles under your leadership.
Yeah, so unfortunately for us, Adam left, leaving quite a big hole in our technical department. Adam was, a huge asset to us and did a lot of great work. But as companies do, or as associations go through, they go through changes and you kind of have to adapt and go along. So we thankfully have been working with Andrew Clement, who's our grassroots manager, and Rochelle, and I'm going to butcher her last name here, Rochelle Jedakewicz. She was our programs manager, and she's, helped us a lot on the administrative side in the technical department, and is now transitioned into that technical manager role, mostly administratively. But us working closely prior to Adam leaving, I think has kind of set it up where it's been an easier transition so far, where Andrew can step in and take a few different roles, and Rochelle has now stepped in more full time, taking different roles. And between the three of us, we're kind of managing what Adam had on his plate. That plus COVID being around is a bit of a blessing in that sense as well.
Yeah, COVID is a challenge. I mean, I think Hector explained it very well earlier, that it's throwing up levels of complexity that I don't think anyone ever could have anticipated. What has it been like for you as a technical lead, having to manage your way through this, from a coaching perspective, wanting to work with players, be on the field, work with coaches, be in the classroom, facilitating workshops? How much of an impact has COVID had on your day-to-day working role?
It's been different. Obviously working from home is quite a bit different than being on the field. But I think, like I said at the beginning, for me, the way that I've looked at it is it's just provided new challenges, or it's forced me to look at things in a different way to get the work done. The way that I guess I operate, or the way that I view it, is the work still needs to be done. It's still there to be done. And something like a pandemic shouldn't stop us. It should ultimately just help us find new ways to kind of modernize or go about our business. So, while we're not on the field coaching, is there ways that we can still engage the players and provide value to the players even at home? And right now we're, providing them with some home training things and different individual skills and activities that they can do at home, and kind of different ways of doing that. And coaching is really no different. And, instead of being in person in a classroom for coach education, how can we go online? How can we still access the coaches and people who want to learn? There has to be ways of doing it. And going with Canada Soccer and a lot of help from you guys, we found different ways to engage the coaches through Google Classroom and different avenues, Zoom and things like that. So it's been challenging for sure, but it's been really, really fun. And it's been great.
Yeah, working from home can be a challenge because you almost have to compartmentalize and block off parts of the day that are work related and home related. You've got an added variable in your house right now that's a very recent addition to your house. Talk a little bit about what that's been like for you as new parents.
Yeah. So my daughter was born 11 weeks ago now, and working from home for most of the summer. Until we were kind of back in the office. It was good and bad. I actually felt like I got a lot of work done at home, but being with my pregnant wife at the time, I was actually able to help her out with a lot of things at home. And then after my daughter was born, and now that we're back at home, unfortunately, because the province has progressed, it's again kind of provided me an opportunity for me to be around and just be around my wife and be around my daughter and help out with different things. So, I can hear her crying, let's say, as an example, where I can quickly just pause what I'm doing, and just go help her out, grab the baby and feed her for 20 minutes. And it gives me a little bit of break from work, and then I can kind of come back. So, it's certainly a new challenge, but it's one that, again, I look at as a bit of a silver lining, that I'm thankful that I'm able to be at home and help out where I can.
And have you started the brainwashing of your child in terms of who she's supposed to support already? Has that already begun?
Yeah, if you ask my wife every single weekend, I'm an Arsenal supporter, and I've bought her an Arsenal kit already, and I have her wear the bibs and everything on the weekend. And every weekend, my wife looks at me and goes, "She has no choice, does she? You're forcing her to like this." So yeah, it's already begun.
And does your wife have a team, or is she? Please tell me she's a Spurs supporter.
No, I'm not so sure I'd be with her if she was a Spurs supporter. She's actually not a big sports person herself, so she'll watch kind of when I'm watching. If anything, she'll watch Portugal. Just with us both being Portuguese, that's kind of our default through the international competitions.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I think your daughter might be in for a lifetime of pain if she's going to be an Arsenal supporter. Although I have to admit, I'm not an Arsenal fan per se, but one of my favorite teams of all time was the Invincibles, and that group of players who just lit it up in the Premier League for an entire season was remarkable. So she's got that to reminisce on when she's a little bit older, and she wants to think back to the good old days. Chris, I really appreciate you taking the time, and I know it's been a challenge for you for sure as a new dad and probably sleep deprived, but appreciate all the hard work that you're doing for those in Manitoba and across the country as part of Canada Soccer's technical committee. Keep up the great work, my friend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. After the break, when we come back, we'll connect with Brad Fougere, get his thoughts on today's episode, talk about what's coming up next in the coming weeks ahead, and talk to you then after the break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Canada Soccer Nation podcast. I'm joined now by Brad Fougere, Digital and Corporate Communications Manager at Canada Soccer. Brad, you and I have talked often about how Manitoba Soccer as a whole has handled the communication of the various phases of return to play, how it went in the early stages, and now how it's going, at the immediate time, and how they've really communicated quite well and made very good decisions. I talked a little bit at the start about Hector's stellar refereeing career. Do you think that, being in environments where you're making really difficult decisions with the whole world watching, do you think that's actually helped and prepared him for making some of the very difficult decisions, albeit in a different context, through a global pandemic?
Well, it clearly hasn't hurt. I mean, yeah. I mean, you talked about it with Hector. They've been through a bit of a roller coaster time. When we first shut down, there was some trepidation. Obviously, they weren't facing too many. Cases, it was hard to forecast how those cases were going to come in to places where there were no cases. There was lots of skepticism about what this was going to mean on the ground, and they were in a really difficult situation. We had to suspend sanctioned soccer across the country as an organization because we didn't know where this was going to go, and luck was on their side for a really long time. So through April and May, as we started to build the return to soccer guidelines and start to peel back some of the restrictions that had been placed in suspending soccer across the country, they were able to sort of test all of the time that they had, anxious to sort of have the green light to get back. And then unfortunately they had to put those plans in practice because things have gotten messy, for lack of a better term. In Winnipeg proper, and that's where the majority of organized soccer happens in Manitoba. But I think Manitoba Soccer has done an incredible job, as of all of our member associations. I just think the cards that were dealt to Hector and to the folks at Manitoba Soccer were particularly trying, and through an omni-channel sort of strategy to ensure that everyone got to see the message. So not just email or not just Twitter, but they're making updates across all of their channels and making sure that they get the message out that the phases have regressed, and ultimately that soccer has been suspended. And it's been prominent in the feeds, and it's a difficult thing to sort of balance. But early days, we built lists. We built lists of public health authorities on Twitter and on other channels to share information, because we knew that it was going to change in various regions of the country as time went on, and that we were going to need to stay on top of it from a national perspective. So while we haven't wanted to discourage return to soccer by saying, COVID is here, COVID is real all the time, there just become certain periods where we need to remind, hey, this we're not out of the woods on this yet. There is no vaccine, and community spread is real, and case numbers are growing in certain communities. So, as we've been saying from the beginning, follow your public health authorities' recommendations wherever you are in the country. That could look like a local public health authority. It could look like a provincial health authority. And if you're looking specifically at what it means to the game, look to your Canada Soccer Member Association, which is the provincial and territorial soccer associations.
wear a mask, socially distant, don't go out if you don't have to. Don't expand your bubble. Again, just following the advice of your public health authority is generally a good approach to take. Your thoughts on Chris Lourenco and some of his comments. Chris is a young up and coming technical leader and a technical director, and I was really refreshed by some of the things that he said. What was the key takeaway for you from Chris's comments?
So I don't know the exact time that Chris was at Bonnie Vital, and I think we talked about this on this podcast previously. Do we have someone from Bonnie Vital on here? Early days?
Not yet. No.
Accurate? No. So I remember speaking about this in my early days. You know what? It was Foothills. I remember the 2016 national championships. And covering them for the first time and not really understanding what a national championships was all about. It is all consuming. It is 3 different venues. At the time, it was 4 different venues, men and women, boys and girls across all of those venues, matches coming fast and furious. But Bonnie Vital kept ringing out. Teams were winning. They were in every category, and they were winning matches in every category. And I can remember writing match capsules or daily recaps, sort of citing, Bonnie Vital leading in 4 categories at the national championships. So his reputation precedes him for sure on that front, assuming he was there at that time. But yeah, no, Chris is great for sure. I know that he's well engaged with your technical group, and is a member of some some sort of spin-off committees from that group, and is doing great work with a number of his colleagues on the technical committee, the technical directors of the various provincial associations. And it's not easy when you have youngsters at home, and it's really, really, really difficult when those youngsters can't say to you, I am hungry, I am tired, having babies is difficult. Having babies during a pandemic is next level. So kudos to him for keeping it together at a time of change. Obviously at Manitoba, Adam going to the Whitecaps changes things for him, right? That changes the makeup of his staff. And kudos to Rochelle on getting that opportunity that she did. She's great. I've interacted with her on a number of different occasions, sort of in a comm/admin role. So yeah, he's got good people. Hector has great people all around him.
Yeah, for sure. The challenge of working from home with youngsters is real. I don't know if you saw this or heard about this, but there's a meteorologist in Toronto, Kelsey McEwen, who works for CTV, I believe, and she was doing a broadcast from home, as most television personalities have now learned to do. I mean, some are obviously in studio, but many of them have learned to broadcast from home. And her son, I believe, had a bit of a challenge and needed mom, and so she basically, in the middle of a broadcast, picked up her son and comforted him and was very real. It was a very real moment. But I think what people said about it was very humanistic, and they really appreciated the fact that she did the right thing and was a caring parent first and an excellent broadcaster second. So I think those are moments that are few and far between. And we ask Chris every time we have a technical director's call, and we ask Chris Cerrone the same thing out in British Columbia, because he's also got a youngster at home, a new baby. How's the sleep going? Are you getting any sleep? It's a very real problem, and I always cringe when the answer is, oh yeah, no, they slept 9 hours. I don't think my kids slept 9 hours until they became teenagers. But it's a very, very real challenge.
Yeah. You don't know life until you've gone multiple weeks without more than about an hour of sleep at a time. It does some special things to your brain, and I don't wish it upon anybody. So kudos to both of those guys and their wives.
I don't know how I was going to say, I don't know how my wife did it, because she did it single-handedly for the most part, as I was a footballer and was really mainly concerned with getting the rest I needed to get to perform on a Saturday at 3:00. So again, to all parents out there who are living that struggle, we salute you. It's not an easy thing to do for sure, but it's a very important one. Hector touched on the challenges, and Chris touched on it a little bit as well. The challenges of doing things remotely. I sat in on the AGM. Manitoba Soccer had their annual general meeting virtually on Zoom on Saturday, November 7th, and I thought they did a very good job. It was a very fluid and uneventful AGM. I've been to several AGMs AGMs over the years. Some of them that I've participated in have been very eventful. And Hector touched on some of the challenges with governance, but I thought all of their candidates spoke very well, and they've elected some new board members. So good luck to them, and look forward to working with them. And BC Soccer as well had their AGM on Saturday, November 7th. And I want to give a lot of credit to BC Soccer because they've done a lot of work in this front. To work with their members, the districts and the adult leagues in British Columbia, to get bylaw amendments passed. So the recent round of amendments that were proposed were largely all carried by the membership. One of which was that private soccer organizations now have the opportunity to become full members of district associations, which is a very, very progressive step in the right direction of inclusion and accessibility. And as we've said before on this program and in our documentation, from Canada Soccer's perspective, a club is an organization that delivers soccer programming. Their business status is irrelevant to us because ultimately, whether you're a private organization or a nonprofit society, in British Columbia's case, it's irrelevant. You're in the same business. You're doing the same service, providing the same service, which is to let kids play soccer and enjoy the game of soccer. So kudos to everyone in British Columbia for passing that bylaw amendment to give that accessibility and inclusion to private soccer organizations in that province. Also want to congratulate Gail Staton from Coquitlam, who was elected as a new BC Soccer president. She has a lot of extensive experience from various roles at the club and regional levels, has been a board director at BC Soccer for a few years now. And also want to thank the outgoing president, Kel Brodsgard, who was on the board there in BC for 10 years, I believe, and the last 4.5 as president. Did a lot of really good work. I've always enjoyed working with Kel, and I want to thank him for all of his service over the years, and hopefully he will continue to be involved in the game at various levels. Coming up, we have an annual meeting of membership, and it's going to be done virtually for Canada Soccer as well. That's on November 21st, I believe, Brad. What's on the horizon looking forward to that event from your perspective?
Yeah, well, as we are well aware, COVID forced the cancellation of our annual meeting that was supposed to take place in Winnipeg, actually, in May. This is first Saturday in May every year is Canada Soccer's annual meeting of the members. This year, we have a presidential election, so we'll be keeping an eye on that. We'll also have a few new directors, and that's the majority of the docket for the annual meeting. So we'll look to close season 2 of the Canada Soccer Nation podcast with the incoming Canada Soccer president after the election on November 21st, and we'll roll out the final episode of season 2 either late in the day on the 21st or early in the week following the annual meeting.
Yeah, it's going to be a busy end of the year. There's a lot of projects that we're wrapping up and that we're working on and preparing for 2021. So this will be our final episode of 2020, which will be a good one because we'll be looking forward to the future and chatting with the incoming president of Canada Soccer about what the future holds. And so I'm looking forward to that discussion. What else are you going to be looking at in the weeks ahead, Brad? What's caught your eye on the football front?
Yeah, we're keeping an eye on the FA Women's Soccer League, of course. We've got many players playing over there at this point. Also France Ligue 1 Women's League. So obviously Ashley and Jordan, as well as Kadisha, Janine, Shalina, Adriana, Jesse, all in action this weekend. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. And then, as we mentioned earlier, we'll be looking forward to getting back to some CONCACAF League and CONCACAF Champions League action. And as ever, we're keeping our eye on when we may be able to schedule the 2020 Canadian Championship final, pending Toronto FC's advancing into the MLS playoffs, of course. But yeah, there's not much going on. And of course, there's way too much going on.
I was going to say it would have been nice to schedule the game this week in Ontario, as it's 20 plus degrees here in November. I suspect that it will be much cooler when we do actually get the opportunity to complete that fixture between Forge and Toronto FC. So we'll be prepared to bundle up if we are fortunate enough to be in the stadium to be able to watch that. As always, thank you for listening. Thanks for being with us. Take care of each other. Look after yourselves. Stay safe. Wear a mask. Be socially distant. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care.